Hello there, and welcome to the second of my Armchair Musings on digital literacy. This is being done for my digital practitioners course, and this little video is my homework for assignment 1.3, which is to analyse tools, techniques, technologies to support digital literacy learning. First of all, I'm going to describe 5 tools, techniques or technologies and how they work briefly. I'm going to try and explain how they can be used, or how I use them to support digital literacy learner needs and preferences. I'm going to go through a couple of advantages and disadvantages of each one. And then I'm going to move on and talk about some of the barriers to using digital literacy or incorporating it, some of the difficulties, if you like, for using these tools, techniques and technologies. And then I'm going to outline 2 learners who are based on real people, although they're probably more likely composites of learners that I've encountered over the years. And I'm going to talk about how I can use TTT, tools, techniques and technologies, to meet their needs. Okay. The TTTs I'm going to talk about are OneNote and the use of class notebook. That's a Microsoft part of the Microsoft Office 365 package, which is available online. I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about OneNote, but also I'm going to talk about a technique that I use using OneNote. So that's going to be my technique I'm going to talk about. Actually, I'm going to move on to talk about a piece of technology, an app, if you like, or a website called Padlet. I'm going to talk about Socrative, which is another a technology, an app. I'm going to talk about the tool I'm going to talk about is my USB microphone. Here it is. Yeah, get that to shot. It's my USB microphone, which I'm using now as we speak, as I speak. And I'm also going to talk about a piece of technology or a piece of software called Audacity, which is an audio editing tool which can be used with aforementioned microphone. So those are my 5 things. Okay, the technique for using OneNote, Padlet, Socrative, a USB mic, and Audacity. I'll start with OneNote. Okay, OneNote is an app, or it's an application that Microsoft produced. It's available. You can get it for your PC, for your for an iPad, tablet, computer, or it's available online as well. You can use it as part of the Office 365 sort of suite of applications. And you can, in OneNote, you can create what's called a class notebook, which is like a physical notebook, so it can have as many pages and sections as you want, but it's also rather nifty in the sense that you can have a teacher part of the notebook, which teachers can just put their stuff on, content that they want students to see, which is only editable by the teacher, and it also has a space for the student. So their space, their part of the notebook, so when they see it, they'll see their own bit to it, which they can put their homework in, for example, which only they can edit, or they can use it to take notes, like any other notebook that they take to a lesson. And it also has a collaborative space, which everyone can contribute to, the teacher and all the students simultaneously to some extent. And that's the technique that I'm going to talk about. Before perhaps I talk about the way that I use it, I'll just mention some of the advantages and disadvantages. advantages are that it's free, huge advantage. You can also download the software. Rather than using it online, you can download it to your own device or your own computer for free as well, and it's a lot more functional if you do that. Lots more formatting kind of options become available if you do that. One of the big advantages, which I'll go into a bit more detail about when I talk about the technique, is the collaborative aspect of it. It enables you and the learners to both work on a document or a part of the notebook at the same time, which is very powerful. Disadvantages: if you're going to use it in that way as a class notebook, it needs a login, so it needs students to be set up with an account, which is fine if they're part of an institution. I work for College Ceredigion, so all learners get access to OneDrive and Office 365 and that whole suite of applications, so it's fine. However, the logging in process itself can still be problematic, and I suppose navigating to the class notebook and then within the class notebook requires a little bit of practice. You know, the learners have to be shown how to use it, and they have to be encouraged to use it in lessons before they get the hang of it. So I think that can be a disadvantage. It can be a bit of a barrier. Okay, the way in which I have used the class notebook within the OneNote app is to get students to contribute paragraphs of text to an essay, if you like. They have a coursework essay that they have to write under controlled conditions, but in order to prepare for that, I would ask them, I would set them a sort of a task which asked them to write a paragraph for that essay as practice. They'd do that handwritten, they'd show it to me during the lesson, I would give them some feedback, and if I was happy with it, I'd ask them to then put it onto the computer, onto the class notebook, in the collaborative space. So they'd go onto the computer one by one as I was going around looking at their work, and they'd type up what they'd done, probably improve it a little bit according to the feedback that I give them, and they'd each be able to put a paragraph into one big document. So it essentially becomes a kind of composite essay of student contributions, which is valuable for a number of reasons. Firstly, that they can see their own work on the screen, and the other people see that work, and they get a sense of validation from having contributed that, and that's quite powerful. That you've said that their work is good enough to be put into a public space, or at least a shared space, and that gives them a boost, confidence-wise. But then, more practically, the students then have an essay, practically, which is made out of each of their contributions, and it can be used as a revision tool. It can be exported or printed out or made available. It is already available via the collaborative space for revision. Okay, so that's how I use OneNote, using the class notebook feature of OneNote within my teaching currently. I'd like to expand on that, do much more of that. It's quite a powerful tool, really. Okay, secondly then, I'm going to talk about Padlet. Padlet is a free online tool, which essentially is a blank space. It's a web page, really. But it's a blank space that you can set up, you can title, you give it its own address, and you can invite anyone who has the address and the permission, if you set it up with permissions, to post anything they want onto it in a box. It's got a title, and then it's got some content, and the content could be text, it could be an image, it could be a video, it could be any file actually. So that's how Padlet works. In terms of what's good about it, again, it's free. It's not really limited in terms of the amount of stuff you can put on it. I haven't reached the limit yet. I've put all kinds of different types of files. I've seen colleagues of mine put all sorts of different files on it. You can put Word files on it, PDFs, films. I'm not sure how big the films have to be before it starts to limit you, but it doesn't seem to be a limit as regards the amount of stuff you can put in this space. Other advantages are that it's you can do it in a non-linear kind of a way, meaning it's not a list. You can put it anywhere. By default it's a free-form format to it, which is quite nice because you can just move things around easily, rearrange things, and and it can look quite pretty if you like that kind of thing. It's really easy to use, and it's very versatile. I've got colleagues using it as a virtual learning environment instead of Moodle because it's so much easier to use. And they've built a whole virtual learning environment out of different Padlet pages, which can then be interlinked, into a coherent VLE. Disadvantages of it are that the formatting is limited. I mentioned before that you get a title and then some content. Well, the title is always in one font, and it's always red, strangely. I don't know if there's a way to change it. There might be, but it would require a bit of digging around in the background. But that's a disadvantage because it can look a bit samey, and the formatting, you kind of have to get used to the fact that the formatting is not very flexible. But once you do get used to it, it's fine. But yeah, there are some issues with formatting, which I think if you upgrade, if you start to pay, you have a premium account, as with many of these things, that you can probably get access to more formatting functions. One of the obvious disadvantages as well is if you're using it as a collaborative site, that you're allowing people to contribute their own boxes and their own thoughts and their own content via a device, then you can get undesirable posts. Particularly if you're working with younger people, they're quite mischievous by nature, and they will post stuff. They'll be tempted to post stuff that is not all that appropriate. I've heard some interesting accounts of colleagues having exactly that problem. They tend to have that problem to start with, while everyone gets used to the novelty of it and they post silly things. But once that phase, you get through that phase, then it becomes less of a problem. And of course, the teacher has got the controlling editing function, so you can get rid of anything which is inappropriate or whatever. So, but there is a disadvantage when anyone can post what they like. Okay, so that's Padlet. I'll move on to a thing called Socrative. I've got Socrative on my phone. It is a piece of software where Socrative. That's one of the pages within Socrative. It's a piece of software whereby you can create a quiz, basically, or a means of feedback, getting your students to answer questions on their phone or on any device that they've got access to. You basically set your quiz up, or a questionnaire, whatever it might be, whatever format for feedback you want from the students. You set it up and you give them a room number, and they need the app, this Socrative student app, and they put the room number in, and they do it straight away on their device. It's free. It's really easy to use. Easy to set up. Easy to access. It's a really quick way of getting feedback from students. I've got a colleague who uses the exit ticket function regularly. Pretty much every lesson he'll do an exit ticket via Socrative, and the students just have 3 questions that they respond to at the end of the lesson. Something like did name one thing that you learned from today's lesson, or it can be open-ended in terms of you can type in what response, or you can do multiple choice, or there's a range of options, and you can set them up quickly in advance, and it's dead easy to do. So lots of advantages to it. Disadvantages: it does need a device. You need a smartphone. So yeah, not everybody does have a smartphone. Most people do, but not everybody does, and we shouldn't assume that necessarily. I mean, you can do the same things with a low-tech approach. Exit tickets are easy to do low-tech, but I'm talking about the technology. So, and I suppose one of the disadvantages is a 6-digit room number is a bit long for some students. It's easy to get wrong. It doesn't sound like a very big disadvantage, but I don't know why it couldn't be a bit shorter. Anyway, well, yeah, there's probably obvious reasons for that, but that's one of the only disadvantages I can think of, besides the access to the actual device that's needed, I suppose. Okay, I'm going to move on to talking about my USB mic. Here it is. This is it's called a Snowball. This one, sorry, I'll get that one in shot. There we are. Yeah, it's my Snowball, and it's a microphone. You plug it straight into your USB port of your computer. It's got a couple of settings for just doing what I'm doing, which is just one person, or you can set it up just with a click of a switch for a group discussion, so that it's multi-directional, omnidirectional it's called, and it's really easy to use. Most computers will recognise it's been plugged in and automatically make use of it, rather than the internal microphone of your computer if you've got one. And it can be used in lots of ways. It can be used to record, well, any kind of I suppose maybe a mini lecture or podcast for teachers doing. It can be used to record feedback, assessment feedback, audio, video and audio, depending on what you feel like doing. You can get your students to use it, which is one of the most powerful aspects of it, which I'm going to talk about in a while. Because it's a great alternative to doing writing, because students don't always need to do writing. I took it upon myself to do this as an audio response, if you like, to my homework, because it doesn't say anywhere that I'm supposed to write it, so I'm having a go at this. And I think it's very powerful for students who don't like to do lots of writing for one reason or another, and yet, but they still have plenty to say. Advantages: it's ease of use. It's so easy to use. The quality of the sound is really good on this particular thing. As I say, it's called a Blue Snowball. I should say that. It's really versatile in terms of how you can use it. You can use it in lots of different ways. Sorry, I can't read my own writing here. No, there we go. Well, that's enough advantages anyway. Obvious disadvantage: it is expensive. It costs about 50 quid. This, it's one-off cost. Obviously, you can use it again and again and again and again. It's pretty robust. Don't think it shouldn't break as long as I treat it nicely. And I suppose one of the major disadvantages to it is it's a bit scary for students, particularly if they're going to be using them. You put a microphone, you put that in front of somebody. There we are. You put that in front of somebody and say, I'm recording you, and then they go, oh. So that's a disadvantage. They soon get over that, mind. Most people get over it really quickly. And you don't have to be so obvious in the way that you use it, of course. But nevertheless, it's quite intimidating particularly if you want students to engage with it, and it is quite intimidating for teachers as well to record themselves, for anybody, I guess. But I've not done it very much, but I'm getting used to it, I suppose. Okay, so that's my USB mic, and there's a piece of software which you can use. I'm actually using this as a video log, so I'm using video and audio in conjunction. But I could have decided to do this purely as an audio file, in which case I might have used a piece of software called Audacity. And it's free open source software. You can just download it off the net. Audacity, that's spelled Audacity. Just download it off the net. It becomes an app for an application on your machine, and it basically enables you to edit the audio that you record. Advantages: it's free. It's relatively easy to use, particularly if you've got any experience of editing. I'd done a bit of editing before I used it, so it was pretty intuitive. Even if you don't, I think you could work it out. It doesn't require a lot of doesn't require expertise, really. It's, as long as you're reasonably IT savvy, you could figure it out, and it, trial and error, basically. So it is relatively easy to use, and there's quite a lot of functionality to it. You can do lots of different things. You can do different effects on your voice and stuff like that if you wanted to do that. Disadvantages is that although I've said that it's intuitive, and particularly if you've already used this kind of software, if you're not familiar with it, it probably would be a bit intimidating to use, and it would take you a while to figure it out. It's not as easy as other apps like the ones I've talked about, like Padlet or Socrative. They really, really are very simple. The Audacity is probably, it does take a little bit more time to figure out how to use. There is a lot of functionality, but that can be a disadvantage too, in the sense that there's so many things you can do that it can be difficult to find the thing that you want in amongst all the options and the menus and what have you. And it does create a file which is quite big if it's an audio file, I suppose. You can convert files, you can downsize them and so forth, but that can be a disadvantage. Okay, so those are my 5 TTTs using class notebook collaboratively, Padlet, Socrative, my USB mic, and the piece of software called Audacity, which you can use with the USB mic. Okay, I'm going to talk about barriers to learning now. Barriers to embedding TTT, tools, technologies and techniques, and there are lots. Expense is an obvious one, I think. People having devices, education institutions, colleges having devices, the expense of that. We have 10 iPads on the Aberystwyth campus of Coleg Ceredigion. 10. That's ridiculous. We should have 100. But we're a small college, we can't afford it yet, unless we get some sort of philanthropic donation. But I'm not going to talk about expense too much because it's obvious. I'm more interested in things like the expertise being a barrier, and the expertise both of the teacher and of the student. Technologies, tools, techniques, they're all quite daunting for a lot of lecturers and for a lot of students still. We are in a digital age, and we're all being encouraged to become much more savvy and use technology more and more, but it's scary. If you've never used a thing before, then it's daunting to start. So I think that's a big barrier, and students likewise, even if they're young and just come out of school and are supposedly very tech savvy and digitally literate, actually they're very often not. They don't know how to do what you think might be basic things, and that could be for a lot of reasons. So getting teachers and learners used to the technology and teaching them and getting them to gain the expertise and to access it and to use it profitably is a barrier. So okay, we've got expertise, we've got expense already. The infrastructure within the educational institution, the IT infrastructure I'm talking about, is a barrier. Things like the Wi-Fi in your college or wherever you are, if it hasn't got very good coverage, or there are pockets of your college which have got poor Wi-Fi connectivity, then that it just ruins any attempt to use a mobile technology or one of those pieces of software I've talked about. We tried to organise a staff development session in Nanteos Mansion, which is just outside my window. I can't quite see if it's just down there. You can't see, it's just down there somewhere. It's a lovely place. Everybody really enjoyed being there. But we realised the day before that the Wi-Fi just didn't work. They'd got Wi-Fi, but it didn't work in the room that we wanted to go into. So we had to do a non-Wi-Fi, very low-tech version of what we wanted to do, which is fine, but it's a major barrier if you haven't got decent Wi-Fi. It's something that will stop all of this effective learning and use of technology if it doesn't work, and that's not something that's in the control of teachers either. We can't do anything about the Wi-Fi. I can moan about it, or I can bring it to the attention of my of our support staff, but these things take time and money to sort out, so they can be a major drawback. So that's infrastructure. The other thing I'm going to talk about is accessibility in terms of the logging in. Just logging in is a pain in the proverbial, really. If I say to students at the start of a lesson, right, can you all log into such and such? It might take 5 minutes, it might take 15 minutes, it might take half an hour sometimes to get round and make sure that everyone can log in. And that could be for a number of reasons. We have these preposterously long student ID numbers which form part of their login, their user ID, and another bit to add on to that is for them to log in to their email to get access to OneNote and OneDrive and all the rest of it. And they have different passwords, and students remembering passwords is a pain. Many of them don't. They don't write them down, or they put them in wrong, or they forget that there's a capital letter in there, or in some cases they don't want to, so they deliberately don't log in properly. I've seen it. Anyway, you name it. There is a way in which logins can go wrong, and it can take up so much time. In the digital literacy session we had, the first one, Alison, you spent a good 10-15 minutes going around making sure that everyone was logged in. It's not your fault. It's just the way it is, and you've got to factor it in. And it's a barrier, because after 15 minutes sat there going, right, I'm not logged in, or I have logged in but he hasn't logged in, you start to switch off. It doesn't matter who you are. It's particularly learners who've got limited motivation to start with. Okay, so that's enough, I think. Expense, expertise, infrastructure, logins, Wi-Fi as part of infrastructure. There's loads there. Okay, let me move on to the last phase. You'll be glad to hear. The short description of two learners with specific digital literacy needs or preferences. Okay, which tools, technologies, techniques might be used to meet their needs. Okay, 2 learners. Learner A is profoundly dyslexic, often demoralised by having to write things or even type things. As soon as you say, I want you to, write such and such in your book on that piece of paper on a computer, they're thinking, oh God, why? I'm not going to be very good at this. Confidence goes down, etc. And I've had lots of learners like this. I'm thinking of 2 in particular, as learner A, if you like. But with this learner, when we checked the specification and realised that the assessment criteria could be fulfilled without actually writing anything, typing anything, that it could be done verbally, just as I'm doing now, the shackles came off. This learner was was doing video, producing video, had made films, brilliant films, great, a really talented producer and editor of films, this learner was. So we simply, in fact, what we did in the end was we got the learner with 2 computers. This was a while back, so we could do it so much easier now. But we've got 2 computers, like the one I'm using now with an iMac with the webcam, and he sat in front of the computer with his film that he'd made, and put the other computer facing him using the webcam, recording him talking about his film as he went through it. Just played it through and talked to the other camera, and evaluated his film, which is what the assessment criteria asked for, and it was brilliant, because it would have taken him forever to write it, to compose it in text, and he would have hated it and would have become very frustrated, and indeed did become very frustrated when asked to do that. But as soon as we used the video method, the IT, it was easy. He got so much to say, so much to articulate, really analytical, valuable stuff that he was able to say about his video, and he didn't need to write it down. And technology really liberated him to fulfill those criteria. So that's learner A. Learner B would be a student with social anxiety, shyness, for want of a better word, lack of confidence when talking face to face, finding classroom discussion and interaction really challenging, being very quiet, not having much to say during those kind of class discussions, which can be really valuable, and to the point that the student maybe wouldn't come into college, wouldn't want to attend. Let's say that social anxiety might be as a root of a mental illness, an actual sort of medical, psychological anxiety. Technology, for example, the use of OneNote and the collaborative tool within that enabled this learner to interact with the rest of the class and to contribute their thoughts very articulately, without the intimidating nature of being in front of them face to face. So they were able to overcome that barrier, that shyness, using the technology in a really positive way, because they could make their contribution, other people could still see their contribution, and they could then feel like they were, having a positive contribution to the class, to the point where the rest of the class were able to see that what they were contributing was actually incredibly valuable, because it was it was recorded. You know, it was set down in black and white, and they could use it again. Whereas when you say something, you know, unless you remember it, it's gone. So using OneNote for the student to post their thoughts, if you like, in a collaborative space was a great way to meet the needs of a learner with social anxiety. Okay, I think I've covered everything. That's probably far too long, and it's going to take you, Alison, far too long to watch, and you're going to probably hate me. So I apologise, and I'll sign off.